How many people did you force yourself to see this week, even though you were repulsed? How many times did your body scream, "Get out of here," but you stayed out of politeness, out of guilt, out of fear of being misunderstood? Your body is not wrong. You're not cold. It is physical. Certain frequencies repel each other, and forcing proximity is making you sick. No one has told you that spiritual awakening has a side effect that hurts, and that will make you question whether you've become a bad person. Because suddenly, without warning, without explanation, for no apparent reason, you start feeling physical repulsion around certain people, people who were once part of his daily life, people you loved, tolerated, lived with without problem. And now, the body rejects it. The stomach tightens. The will to get out of there is stronger than any education or goodwill. And then comes the guilt, that inner voice that whispers, "You've become arrogant. You're finding yourself. You've become cold, antisocial, difficult." But what if that voice is completely wrong? What no one explains, and what this video will unravel from start to finish, is that this repulsion is not a character flaw. It is a silent symptom of a profound transformation that is taking place in your energy field. His nervous system recalibrated, your energetic sensitivity skyrocketed, and certain frequencies that had previously gone unnoticed now cause real physical discomfort, nausea, headache, exhaustion, that urge to just not be there. This has a name, it has an explanation, it has a reason to exist, and understanding what's behind it will completely change the way you relate to yourself and the people around you. If you've ever felt like you have to get away from someone but can't explain why, if you've ever woken up feeling guilty about not putting up with certain people, if you've ever wondered if you've become a worse version of yourself, this video was made for you. Comment below the number 7 if you have ever felt this repulsion and did not know what was happening. You'll be surprised at how many people are going through the exact same thing as you. There is a feeling that very few people talk about openly, but almost everyone who is going through a process of spiritual awakening has already felt a physical repulsion, almost involuntary, around certain people. It's not antipathy, it's not nagging, it's not tantrum. It is the body that withdraws, that wants to get out of there, that sends clear signals that something in that energy field simply does not fit anymore. It is as if the presence of certain people weighed literally on the nervous system. And this feeling, as real as it is usually accompanied by a silent shadow: guilt. Guilt is the most insidious weight of this process. The person begins to wonder if he has become arrogant, if he is thinking he is better than others, if he has become cold, antisocial, difficult to live with. She looks back and remembers that she used to accept that dinner, that date, that long conversation. And now, it can't stand certain people even for half an hour. This generates a huge confusion. Am I the problem? No. This question, as honest as it may seem, is starting from a wrong premise. The problem isn't who you've become. It's that you still don't fully understand what's happening to you. What is happening, in fact, is one of the most profound transformations that a human being can experience. The energy field has become an immune system. Just as the body rejects a virus, not out of judgment but out of energy incompatibility, your system began to repel frequencies that it previously tolerated, perhaps because you did not yet have the sensitivity to perceive them. Certain people have become like viruses for their energy. The approach brings physical discomfort, tiredness, heaviness, closure. And removing people in this context is not cruelty. It is the organism fulfilling its most primary function: to preserve life. But why exactly does this happen? What triggers this mechanism? Of all the symptoms that accompany spiritual awakening, this is undoubtedly the one that generates the most guilt and shame. Because pushing people away in our culture is seen as a character flaw. From a young age, we are taught that being good means being available, that love is synonymous with enduring, that kindness is never saying no. So when the body begins to reject certain presences almost automatically, the mind collapses. Am I thinking I'm better than others? Will I become arrogant? And this question, as legitimate as it may seem, reveals a deep misunderstanding of what is happening. What is happening is not superiority, it is protection. The nervous system has recalibrated and now detects energy mismatch much more accurately than before. It is not a conscious judgment, it is not a rational decision, it is not a choice. It is the body's involuntary response. Think of an allergy. The person who does not tolerate peanuts does not think he is better than peanuts. Her body simply does not process that substance without suffering. In the same way, you are not saying that certain people are inferior. You are saying, through your own organism, that living with them makes you sick. There is a huge difference between arrogance and limit, between selfishness and self-care. Understanding this difference changes everything, because while the person believes that they are being cold or antisocial, they force contact that they should avoid, blame themselves for feeling what they feel, and ignore signals that the body sends clearly. And then the cycle gets worse. More contact, more discomfort, more guilt, more confusion. But when she begins to recognize that I need to move away, it's not abandonment, it's a responsibility to herself. Something changes. Guilt loses strength. The body ceases to be an enemy and becomes a guide. And the question shifts from what's wrong with me to what is my body trying to tell me. It's a subtle turn, but one that paves the way for a much deeper understanding of what's going on. There is an experience that those who are in the process of spiritual awakening know well, but rarely manage to put into words. The feeling of absorbing the energy of those around them as if it were their own. Someone anxious enters the room and suddenly the heart races for no apparent reason. Someone angry starts talking and the stomach tightens before even processing what was said. It's not ordinary emotional empathy, it's involuntary energy absorption. The energy field has become so sensitive that it picks up frequencies that most people simply don't notice. And this, which seems like a gift, also has a cost. Certain presences start to cause real physical discomfort. This discomfort is not an exaggeration. It is not drama, it is not too sensitive being too sensitive. It's nausea around specific people. It's an instant headache when someone with a dense vibration enters the room. It is physical exhaustion after a conversation that lasted 20 minutes. The body literally rejects that frequency and expels you from there as a mechanism for preserving the energy field. There are reports of people who describe exactly that. I get physically sick around X. I need to leave or I'm going to vomit. My head explodes when it arrives. It's no coincidence. It is the nervous system fulfilling an energetic protection function that was previously dormant. The crucial point here is this. This has nothing to do with thinking that someone is inferior. A person with chronic migraine doesn't think he's better than noise. He just can't stand certain noisy people without suffering physical consequences. In the same way, energetic incompatibility is not moral judgment. It is incompatibility itself, like two frequencies that, when they meet, create interference instead of harmony. And understanding this is liberating because it takes the weight of arrogance versus limit and puts the experience in the right place. It's not a character flaw, it's sensitivity that needs to be protected. But energetic sensitivity is just the beginning. There's something even more disconcerting that starts to happen, and it involves seeing what most people prefer not to see. There is a moment in spiritual awakening that is both fascinating and disturbing, when one realizes that one can see through social masks with a clarity that one simply did not have before. Someone smiles, compliments, acts nice, but something in the body tightens. An inner voice whispers that this is not real, that there is falsehood behind that smile, that the words say one thing while the energy screams something completely different. And the most disconcerting thing is not to realize this. It is no longer being able to ignore. Before, it was possible to push this feeling down and play the social game. Now, there is no way. The body rejects dissonance. When someone acts incongruously, they talk about friendship but act with interest, preach values they don't practice, wear permanent social masks. It creates genuine physical discomfort in those who have heightened energy sensitivity. It's not moralism, it's not judgment, it's not thinking that the person is bad. It is that falsehood, energetically, has a very specific frequency. And this frequency causes a kind of interference in the field of those who are in a process of frequency change. Living with those who live permanently masked begins to seem unbearable, not by choice, but by body intuition that can no longer be silenced. And here lies a point that few people explain. It is not about condemning those who wear masks. Every human being, at some point, wears one. The question is permanence. There are people whose social mask is so close to their face that they no longer know who they are underneath it. And living with this for a long time becomes energetically unbearable for those who operate in a frequency of authenticity. Withdrawal does not come from judgment, it comes from self-protection. It's different, it's subtle, but it's real. And when the person understands this difference, he stops feeling bad for having to distance me from those who live in constant falsehood. But seeing through masks is only part of what's happening. What comes next is even deeper and has to do with something that quantum physics has been explaining for decades. There is a principle in quantum physics that explains precisely what happens when two people with very different vibrations meet. Incompatible frequencies repel each other. It's not metaphor, it's not esotericism, it's physics. When the energy field of someone who operates at denser frequencies, driven by fear, scarcity, constant drama, meets the field of someone who is in the process of expanding, the two fields simply do not talk. It's like trying to plug a USB into an HDMI input. It's not that one is better than the other, they're physically incompatible, and forcing that connection won't work, no matter how hard both parties try. The practical experience of this is very concrete. Think of a person you've known for years, with whom you've always gotten along, but who lately leaves you with a strange feeling, a tightness in the chest, an inexplicable tiredness, a desire to end the conversation ahead of time. There was no fight, there was no betrayal, there was no apparent motive. What happened was a divergence in frequency that the body perceives before the mind processes. And there is a simple test for this. Close your eyes. Think about the person. If the body contracts, tightens, becomes heavy, energy incompatibility. If the body relaxes, expands, becomes light, compatibility. The body knows. I always knew. The difference is that now the energetic protection no longer allows you to ignore this signal. The most important point here, and one that relieves enormous guilt, is to understand that incompatibility is not hierarchy. It's not that you've evolved more, or that the other person is inferior, or that there's a spiritual dispute going on. It is simply that each one is in its element. Just as fish and bird are not incompatible for the sake of superiority, but for the sake of the environment. One needs water, the other air. None are better. They're just different. And when the frequency mismatch is real, forcing coexistence will not nourish either. It will just drain. You're going to get sick. It will create resistance where there should be flow. And speaking of drainage, there is a signal that the body sends that is even more accurate than any mental analysis, a sign that precedes any conscious thought. There is something that happens at a later stage of spiritual awakening that few people can explain without sounding crazy. The body begins to detect lies before the mind processes anything. It is not vague intuition, it is not paranoia, it is not fertile imagination. It's physical. The stomach tightens in a split second when someone says something false. The throat closes when a conversation is not authentic. The skin shivers when there is manipulation in the air. The body knows and warns with disconcerting accuracy when something or someone is not being true. And this recalibrated nervous system becomes, over time, the most reliable lie detector in existence. The practical consequence of this is straightforward. Living with people who lie compulsively, whether to themselves or to others, becomes physically unbearable. It's not moralism, it's not character judgment, it's not thinking you're better. It's just that lying creates real physical discomfort, a kind of constant energetic noise that the system simply can't filter anymore. And here comes a legitimate doubt that many people have. But how do I know if it's real body intuition or if it's anxiety, insecurity, projection? The difference is subtle, but very clear. Anxiety brings contraction accompanied by confusion. The person does not know what they are feeling or why. Body intuition brings contraction accompanied by clarity. It has a quiet certainty, without hysteria, that simply says, "Something here is not right." Avo. And when this sensation is consistent, it doesn't just appear on a bad day, but whenever the same person is around, it's a sign that the body is masterfully fulfilling its function of energetic protection. Reports from those who experience this are almost identical. My body knows before my head. I feel physical discomfort around fake people. It's not that I think they're lying, I do. This is not madness. It's bodily intuition, operating at a level that most people have never developed because they never needed to, or never allowed it. And if your body has already become a lie detector, imagine what happens when it starts to identify something even more subtle. People who don't lie openly, but who suck your energy in ways you're only just beginning to notice. There is a type of relationship that for years went unnoticed, and that now, in a process of spiritual awakening, has become impossible to ignore. It's the toxic friendships that were never real friendships. That person who only shows up when they need something, who transforms each conversation into a monologue about his own problems. That disappears when you need it and reappears when you have something to suck. Before, this was normalized. After all, friendship takes work. Everyone has their phases. That's just the way it is. But now the body no longer accepts this narrative. Now you realize, with almost uncomfortable clarity, that these relationships have always been one-sided. They have always been energy vampires disguised as friends. The most accurate signal from an energetic vampire isn't what they do during conversation, it's how you feel afterward. If every interaction with a specific person leaves you exhausted, empty, with that feeling that you've just been drained completely, your body is giving you a clear diagnosis. It's not freshness, it's not too sensitive, it's not lack of generosity. It is self-preservation. It is the organism saying that that exchange is not exchange, it is extraction. And continuing to give yourself to exhaustion is not a virtue, it is negligence with yourself. Selfishness versus self-care needs to be revisited here. Preserving your energy is not selfishness. It is the minimum condition for you to have something real to offer to those who really deserve it. The part that hurts the most about this recognition is not realizing that there are energy vampires in your life. It's realizing that you've allowed it for so long, often for fear of seeming cold, antisocial, difficult. But now that the veil has fallen, there is a choice to make. Continue nurturing relationships that drain out of guilt or habit, or set strict boundaries and reduce contact honestly and without drama. You don't need an epic confrontation. You don't need a closing speech. Sometimes it is enough to answer less, being less available, prioritizing those who nurture. The body has even begun to do this on its own. Keeping away people who drain is a protective reflex that precedes any conscious decision. And speaking of drainage, there is another pattern that exhausts in an even more specific way, and that involves something that many people still confuse with empathy. There is a profile of person that in the past you probably tolerated with almost infinite patience, the one who lives in constant drama. There is always a new crisis. There is always an urgent problem. There is always a catastrophic situation that needs your immediate attention. And you entered the cycle, comforting, advising, getting involved, worrying. I thought it was empathy. I thought I was helping. But now something has changed radically. Just hearing the first signs of this pattern, the body is already reacting. An anticipated tiredness, a physical resistance, a genuine desire not to be there. Drama started to cause physical repulsion, and this confuses a lot because it seems like a lack of empathy. It seems like coldness. It seems that you have become a worse person. It didn't. What happened is that his nervous system learned to distinguish real pain from drama addiction. And this is one of the most important distinctions of spiritual awakening. Someone who is genuinely suffering and looking for a way out, you feel it, and the desire to help comes naturally. But someone who is addicted to drama, who rejects every solution offered, who needs the audience more than the resolution, this the body identifies with surgical precision and rejects unceremoniously. Because drama is dense frequency fuel, and you no longer operate at that frequency. Trying to stay in this field out of solidarity doesn't make you more empathetic. It makes you sicker. There is a simple test that helps to distinguish the two cases. You offer a practical, concrete, applicable solution and observe the reaction. A person in real pain considers, tests, seeks a way out. A person addicted to drama rejects the solution and keeps complaining because the problem was never the problem. It was the attention that the problem generated. When this becomes clear, the distancing ceases to be cruelty and becomes the only possible honest move. It's not that you can't stand certain people. It's that you can't pretend that feeding drama is the same as offering help. And if the drama already exhausts you, imagine what happens when the contradiction between what someone says and what they do becomes impossible to ignore. There is a type of discomfort that is difficult to name but impossible to ignore. The feeling of being close to someone who preaches one thing and practices something completely different. Person who talks about love but treats the people around him with disregard. Who talks about spiritual evolution but acts driven by ego at all times. That presents itself as light but emanates a darkness that you feel even before she opens her mouth. Before waking up, it was possible to compartmentalize this. Everyone has their contradictions. No one is perfect. It's none of my business. Now, that ability to ignore has simply evaporated. Cognitive dissonance has become intolerable, and being close to it causes psychological and physical discomfort that the body no longer accepts to absorb in silence. The most classic and most painful example is that of the spiritual guru who treats the people around him badly, who speaks of compassion on stage and humiliates assistants backstage, who has built a persona of wisdom but whose energy field contradicts every word he says. Those with heightened energy sensitivity feel this contradiction as a kind of unbearable noise, like trying to listen to music with constant interference. It is not possible to relax. It is not possible to open up. It is not possible to be present. The body is in a state of permanent alert, trying to process the incongruity between what is said and what is felt. And this constant alertness drains in a way that goes far beyond ordinary tiredness. What needs to be clear is that alienating people because of this dissonance is not moral judgment, it is energy hygiene. It is not necessary to condemn the person, it is not necessary to expose him, it is not necessary to enter into conflict. It is simply recognizing that the energetic mismatch between authenticity and permanent contradiction is real, and that living with it for a long time has too high a cost. Energy protection, in this case, is not optional. It is necessary. And when the person finally accepts this without guilt, something interesting begins to happen. Instead of wondering how to endure these presences, they begin to wonder what to do with all this clarity that the body is offering. And that's exactly what we need to talk about now. Getting here is already a big step. Understanding that physical revulsion around certain people is not arrogance, it is not coldness, it is not inflated spiritual ego, it is protection. It completely changes the relationship with that experience. But understanding without action is just intellectual comfort. The question that really matters is, what to do with all this in practice, how to deal with energy incompatibility on a daily basis, especially when it is not possible to simply disappear from the lives of everyone who drains. The answer begins with a decision that seems simple but requires courage. Accept without guilt. Do not force contact that the body rejects. Do not justify yourself excessively. "I'm busy" is enough. You don't owe energetic explanations to those who aren't prepared to understand. The second layer is active energy protection, and this is more concrete than it seems. When contact with people of dense vibration is unavoidable, in a work meeting, at a family lunch, in a social engagement that cannot be cancelled, there are practices that help preserve the energy field. Visualizing a bubble of light around the body before the encounter is a simple and effective technique. Coarse salt baths after exhausting contacts help to clean the absorbed energy. Spending time in silence, in nature, or in meditation after dense interactions recalibrates the nervous system. These are not inaccessible mystical rituals. They are practical tools of energy hygiene that make a real difference in the daily lives of those with heightened energy sensitivity. The most liberating point of all this, however, is learning to trust the body without judgment, neither the person being pushed away nor oneself. An incompatible person is not a bad person. It's just incompatible. This distinction, when truly internalized, takes the moral weight off the distancing and puts it in the right place. It is not personal rejection. It is recognition of frequencies that do not meet. And when guilt loses strength, when judgment dissolves, when the body is finally treated as an ally rather than an enemy, something begins to reorganize. The spaces that were occupied by relationships that drained began to be free. And empty space, in the energy field, does not stay empty for long. But before talking about what comes to fill that gap, there's an absolutely crucial distinction that needs to be made, because without it, everything that's been said so far can be distorted in a very dangerous way. There is a subtle trap that lurks in the very process of genuine spiritual awakening, and that, if not recognized in time, turns a journey of expansion into a journey of arrogant isolation. This trap has a name: spiritual ego. This is when the person begins to use the vocabulary of awakening, vibration, frequency, 5D, energetic protection, not as tools for self-knowledge, but as a justification for feeling superior. I don't get close to that person because my frequency is higher. I cut so-and-so because he's still in 3D. I don't relate to someone who is not on the same spiritual level as me. It looks sophisticated. It seems evolved. But underneath each of these phrases is something very familiar: arrogance in new clothes. The difference between spiritual ego and real protection is detectable in a very specific detail: the feeling that accompanies withdrawal. When it is spiritual ego, there is a sense of superiority, a veiled contempt, of satisfaction in placing oneself above. The person cuts contacts impulsively, without trying to set limits beforehand, without recognizing the other's journey, without any shred of humility. When it is real protection, the dominant feeling is sadness, not resentment, not contempt, not superiority. It is the genuine recognition that two people who once connected simply no longer fit together, and that maintaining this forced coexistence does not serve either of them. There is respect for the path of the other, even if at a distance. The most honest test is simple and straightforward. When you think about the people you've walked away from, how do you feel? If the answer is something like, "I'm better, I've evolved more," let them stay at their level, spiritual ego. If the answer is something like, "I miss who they were, but I feel bad about who they have become, and I need to step aside out of necessity," not superiority, legitimate protection. This distinction is not a detail. It is the difference between using spiritual awakening as a tool for growth or as a shield for the ego. And maintaining this honesty with oneself is perhaps the most difficult and most necessary spiritual exercise of this entire journey. Because even when the withdrawal is legitimate, there is an emotion that insists on appearing, and that deserves all the attention in the world. Guilt is one of the most persistent emotions of this whole process, and also one of the most misinterpreted. It appears at dawn when the person wonders if they are abandoning someone who needed them. It appears when a family member comments that she has changed, that she has become distant, that she is no longer the same. It appears when a friend of years disappears from the company and she wonders if it was cruel, if it was cold, if it was wrong. And the most insidious thing about guilt is that it masquerades as a moral conscience. It seems that feeling guilty is a sign that you're still a good person. But there's a huge difference between healthy guilt, which points to a real mistake that needs to be corrected, and hidden guilt, which is just the weight of an old conditioning that said you owed your energy to everyone who asked for it. No one explains this clearly enough. Preserving is not abandoning. Establishing distance from the one who drains is not cruelty. It is the only honest way not to feed a relationship that no longer serves either of them. There is an image that sums up this idea well. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone warm. You can't drown trying to save whoever pulls you to the bottom. It's not selfishness versus self-care. It's basic physics. An emotionally drained, energetically drained, spiritually empty person has nothing real to offer anyone. Self-emptying is not a virtue. It is negligence disguised as generosity. The turning point happens when the person stops treating guilt as absolute truth and starts treating it as information. Did you feel guilty? Great. Question. Does this guilt point to a real mistake, something that hurt someone unfairly? Or does it just point to the discomfort of prioritizing yourself for the first time? If it's the latter, guilt isn't a sign that you've made a mistake. It's a sign that you're changing. And genuine change always generates discomfort, especially for those who are used to seeing you available at any cost. Feeling guilty in this process is not weakness. It is a silent symptom of a transformation that is really happening. And when this transformation is consolidated, when spaces open up and guilt loses strength, something begins to appear on the horizon that makes all this absolutely valid. There is a moment in this process that no one warns will come, but that inevitably comes to those who had the courage to honor their own energy. It is the moment when the space that was opened at such emotional cost begins to be filled by something completely different from everything that came before. No more relationships that drain, that demand performance, that demand availability without offering reciprocity. What begins to appear are nurturing connections, people who share frequency, who make the body relax instead of contract, who bring lightness instead of heaviness. And the first time this happens, the person understands, in a visceral way and not just intellectually, why the whole process was worth it. The difference between old and new relationships is almost shocking. Before, there was quantity, too many contacts, too many social obligations, too much energy spent on maintaining bonds that have never been genuinely reciprocal. Now there is absurd quality, fewer people, but real. Conversations that feed rather than drain. Friendships where the exchange is balanced, where there is no energetic vampire or constant drama or permanent social masks. Where it is possible to be exactly who you are, without performance, without filter, without the fatigue of sustaining a version of yourself that pleased everyone but yourself. This type of connection is not found by forcing coexistence with incompatibles. It only appears when there is space for it to arrive. And here's the point that matters most. Your tribe exists. People who vibrate at your frequency, who understand your energetic sensitivity without needing explanation, who nurture your field instead of sucking, they exist and are in the same process as you. But as long as the space is occupied by relationships that no longer serve, there is no way for them to arrive. Nature does not tolerate vacuum, but it does not operate in overcrowding either. Every step away that hurt, every limit that cost guilt, every unsaid with a heavy heart was, in fact, an act of preparation for what is to come. And what comes is better than anything that was left behind. But before closing this cycle, there is one last thing that needs to be said, perhaps the most important of all. It's time to say out loud what perhaps no one has said to you yet, and that you've long needed to hear. You're not cold. He is not arrogant. It is not antisocial. It's not too sensitive. It's not difficult to live with. It's not selfish because I need to get away from those who make you sick. You are sensitive, deeply, genuinely sensitive, in a world that still doesn't quite know what to do with people like that. And that sensitivity, which for so long seemed like a burden, is actually its most accurate navigation system. Your body knows who is and who is no longer good for your journey. He always knew. The difference is that now you're finally learning to trust him. Trusting the body is not a simple task in a culture that teaches from an early age to ignore internal signals in favor of external approval, which says you must be accessible, available, tolerant at any cost. That transforms self-preservation into selfishness and limit into cruelty. But every time you respected physical revulsion around certain people, every time you walked away from a toxic friendship even though you felt guilty, every time you said no to an encounter your body rejected, you were doing the bravest and most loving act there is, taking care of yourself with the same dedication you've always cared for others. This is not arrogance versus limit. It is wisdom. Your energy is yours. It is not a collective resource available to anyone who wants to access it. It is not a social obligation. It is not a bargaining chip. It is not proof of goodness. It's yours, and protecting it isn't about closing your heart to the world. It's about making sure that when you open up, you have something real and genuine to offer, even if it hurts to push away, even if it seems cruel to those on the outside, even if guilt appears in the early hours and whispers that you are making a mistake. You're not. You are, perhaps for the first time, doing exactly what needs to be done. And that quiet courage to honor your own frequency is the beginning of all that is yet to come. You've come this far. And that says a lot about who you are. It's not just anyone who is willing to look at themselves in this depth, to question patterns that have been built over years, to consider that maybe the problem was never you, but rather the way you were taught to ignore everything your body tried to tell you. Now you have in your hands knowledge that most people will never seek. The question that remains is, what are you going to do with it? Because knowledge without action is only intellectual comfort. So here's a real, concrete challenge, still applicable today. Think of a person in your life who consistently leaves you exhausted, who drains your energy, who causes that physical discomfort you've learned to ignore. Just one. And you honestly ask yourself, have you respected the signals your body sends about this relationship, or have you forced a coexistence that no longer serves either of you? There is no need for a dramatic confrontation. There is no need for a closing speech. Sometimes the first step is to simply stop blaming yourself for feeling what you feel. This in itself is already a huge transformation. Have you ever walked away from someone and felt it was the right decision even though it hurt? Or are you still stuck in the guilt of prioritizing your own energy? Comment below. This conversation is important, and you'll be surprised at how much other people are going through exactly the same thing. And if this video touched on something you were carrying without being able to name it, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because there is much more content coming out there about spiritual awakening, energy protection, and everything that no one has taught you about really taking care of yourself. Your journey just became clearer, and the best is yet to come.